How's it going, everybody? Welcome to General Hospital Envy, my GH After Show. Before we get into it, we gotta give GH a big congratulations. They took home a bunch of Daytime Emmys this weekend. Max Gail took home the Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. Maurice Bernard took home Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series. GH as a whole got an award for Outstanding Directing in a Drama Series, as well as the biggest award of the night, Outstanding Drama Series. Congratulations to the cast and crew of GH. You guys did an awesome job last year, considering all the complications that you guys had to go through with COVID. Like, congratulations, you guys did a wonderful job. Also, I want to say a really big thank you to all of you guys that watched my performance on Dion's Corner last night. Seeing your comments this morning really warmed my heart. I loved it. I love you guys. Thank you. Okay, now let's get into it. Chase pulled through, obviously, and he also finds out that Gregory is actually his real dad, and you know, it's a happily ever after, except oops, he might be paralyzed from the waist down just in time for Michael and Willow to need another reason to continue to lie to Chase. Even before Willow and Michael learned that, they seemed reluctant to even tell him the truth, and Brooklyn, I'm gonna need you to step up and be there for Chase. Like, you need to be the one to tell him the truth. If they're not gonna do it, step up, girl. You're his bestie. Speaking of Brooklyn, things are about to get more and more messy and complicated for her and Maxie and the baby situation. Dante and Austin found the dead nurse in the hole, and obviously there was no baby there. They assume that Peter killed the nurse and took the baby, of course. It makes sense. Something else that was in the hole was the phone that belonged to the nurse, and as you guys know, Maxie used that phone to call Brooklyn and pinned her location. So I'm thinking Dante is going to somehow figure out that that pin was sent to the hotel where Brooklyn supposedly had her baby. Better watch out, girls. Meanwhile, Maxie also took it upon herself to visit baby Louise at the Quartermain mansion, and when Brooklyn and Valentine discover Maxie holding the baby, she calls the baby Louise. I'm like, oh my god, this girl is about to crack. None of this would even be happening if they knew that Peter was actually dead. Speaking of which, Cameron actually pays Jason a visit to apologize for blaming him for Franco's death, and Jason forgives him. Later on, Jason runs into Elizabeth at the hospital and tells her about the visit, and then he mentions to Elizabeth that he has everyone on the search for Peter, and in a surprising turn of events, Elizabeth tells him that it's not necessary. She doesn't completely admit what happens, but she does say that Peter is gone for good and that there's no reason for him to search. So I think Jason's figured out that Elizabeth clearly knows that Peter is dead and probably knows who kills him. Personally, I think that they should just let Jason in on it. I mean, if anyone knows how to cover up a murder, it's Jason. At some point, someone's gonna get down to that basement and find Peter in the freezer. So, you know, get Jason to just get rid of the body better than you guys can. Y'all are new with this, right? Leave it to Jason. Speaking of Elizabeth, she and Carly had a bit of a bonding moment this week. They run into each other at the graveyard when they were visiting their husbands' graves, and Elizabeth apologizes to Carly for not believing that Jason was innocent. Carly forgives her, and then they talk about, you know, the loss of a husband. Carly, if only you knew that your husband was actually just waiting tables in Nixon Falls right now. Nina was also at the graveyard this week. She visits Nell's grave and just catches up with her and tells her that she's been let back into Wiley's life, the only piece of Nell that she has left, and then it suddenly registers in her brain, oh shit, I know that Michael's dad is alive, and when he finds out the truth, I will never be in Wiley's life ever again. You think? All this because Carly was rude to you on the phone. Honestly, woman. Sonny's gonna make his way down to Port Charles eventually, I know it. Let's actually talk about Carly for a minute. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I find it super entertaining that she is so desperate to try and figure out what Jason and Britt are with each other. I mean, she walks in on Jason and Britt flirting at the boxing ring and sees that they're almost kissing. And when Britt leaves, she obviously talks about Novak and the mob situation, but she also asks, you know, what's the deal with you two? Jason is a little bit cryptic because he doesn't want her to know about Britt's Huntington's disease because that's not, you know, his story to tell. But he does say that she is important to him, and Carly is just kind of like, okay, I guess. Carly hates being left in the dark, but Jason does remind her, you know, I am your bitch, basically. Like, I am your lapdog, Carly. I do whatever you want. It's just, you know, there's certain things that you can't know because it's not my place. During their conversation, they actually show that a property on the docks has exploded, and it's like really bad early 2000s CGI. And I can confidently say that because, and I hate that I know this, This was the exact footage that they used back in 2008 when a property on the docks exploded with Claudia and Carly and Michael all in it. Little kid Michael. Reduce, reuse, recycle, I guess. I apologize to the show for not having the memory of a fish because it must pain you to know that some fans do notice these things. I'm one of those fans. And honestly, I kind of like to flex my knowledge of GH history, especially when it's something that I clearly remember. Mostly because the CGI was so bad, but it's even worse now because it's like, it's literally, how many years? It's literally 13 years later. But yeah, anyway, clearly this Novak guy has made a move on Sonny's territory because he thinks that Sonny's organization is weak, and my bet is that Cameron Matheson, who's supposedly coming to the show, is going to play that character. Alright, let's talk about Alexis and Sean. Now, Alexis has had a hunch that Judge Carson might have some racial bias and that it could have played a role into how she sentenced Sean as well as revoked his parole. Alexis has been looking into all the cases that Judge Carson has taken on with people of color over the last several years, and she's noticed a pattern of harsher sentencing for people of color, but here's my thing. I think that it's really great that GH is doing the story. However, I find myself a little bit uncomfortable, and the reason for that is that they've already insinuated on the show that Nicholas was behind the reason that Sean's parole got revoked. So I feel like while it's good that the show is telling a story about racial injustice in law, this was like a bad way to go about it, especially if it does turn out that Nicholas for sure was behind Sean getting his parole revoked. I find that it taints the story a little bit, you know what I mean? That's just my 2 cents, of course, it's just my opinion, but anyway, Alexis and Sean are continuing their conversation, but then all of a sudden, these guards come in and tell Sean that his library privileges have been revoked as well, and there's no reason for it. Sean, of course, is a little bit upset, which gets the guard riled up a little bit, and Alexis says that she'll get him a lawyer, and then the guard turns on Alexis and throws her to the ground, and then throws her into solitary. And then Sean goes back to his jail cell. Meanwhile, while all that's happening, Molly and TJ were at Kelly's, and Brando and Sasha walk in, and it was so awkward. You could cut the tension with a knife. Obviously, there's some residual feelings left over from, you know, the fact that Brando and Molly had slept together, and TJ was pretty mad at Brando about that, even though they, you know, she thought that they were broken up. But Brando just gets so awkward. He's like, you guys know Sasha, right? Like, she's having a baby, and I'm the father. Like, yay! And they're just like, cool. So awkward. But anyway, I don't remember if I brought this up at some point, but the actress that plays Sasha is actually really heavily pregnant in real life, so that's why it seems like this pregnancy story is going by so fast. I didn't know that when I was talking about it a couple weeks ago, and I feel like I should address that. It's not that I said anything offensive or anything, it's just funny because I was like, wow, this pregnancy storyline is going so fast, like she's already showing so much and it's been like a month, but you know, the actress is really pregnant, so like what can they do? They could probably hide it better, but you know, it kind of makes sense now. I feel bad, I'm sorry. For the record, I'm still down for the show to speedrun this pregnancy though. Anyway, shortly after that, Judge Carson actually shows up to Kelly's and talks to Molly and congratulates her on her new job with the DA. She even offers to Molly that if she has any questions or needed any advice to just come to her, her door's always open. Molly feels kind of awkward about that considering she's the one that sentenced her mother to jail. And if Judge Carson does have racial bias, it's gonna put Molly and her potential mentor at odds with each other. Could be a sticky situation for Molly to be in, especially because we know that Molly wants to crack down on racial injustice in the system, so it'll, you know, I want this story to happen on screen, as long as they can get Nicholas out of it. I just need the show to either confirm or flat out deny that Nicholas had anything to do with what happened to Sean and his parole being revoked. Let's talk about Nicholas and Ava now. So they still have their mystery stalker, aka Spencer, going after them. They moved out of Windermere and moved into the Metro Court. They had Avery with them, and then Avery discovers a bear, and the bear has Ryan Chamberlain's voice. Obviously, it's probably a deep fake. It's been done on the show before. Sam and Spinelli used Helena's voice once recently. And I'm sure that Spencer himself has enough resources that he can pull this off himself. It still baffles me that Spencer hasn't even crossed their mind as a possibility at this point, but whatever. Ava is obviously shaken up by the incident because, you know, it's a threat to her daughter, and she actually calls Carly and asks her to take Avery for a while, and then when they leave, she tells Nicholas that they can't do this anymore. She can't be with Nicholas if it's gonna put Avery in danger, and Nicholas is like desperate to hang on to Ava, and to an extent I get it, but it really comes across as like Nicholas not really caring about Avery being in potential danger. He was saying things like, this isn't the end for us, and it was like almost borderline Ryan Chamberlain territory, you know what I mean? It didn't actually come across as loving, it came across a little bit obsessive, so I was like, ooh. But yeah, I'm super confident that it's Spencer doing this. Another reason why I think it's Spencer is because there's a lot of talk about Trina's graduation party, and what better way for Spencer to make a comeback than to appear at a party where all of his old friends are. I mean, I don't know if him and Trina were friends, but I mean, Jocelyn and Cameron are gonna be there, so he knows them at least. Alright, finally, there seems to be a bit of a hospital storyline brewing, so obviously the hospital needs a new leader of the board, and it turns out that they have brought on Monica Quartermain as the head of the board now. And she rehires Bobby and puts Epiphany back into her original position as well. And of course, Britt has questions. She wants to know if she's going to be fired as chief of staff, and Monica says if that is the case, it won't be out of prejudice. But obviously she does make it known that it's a possibility, and Terry decides that she wants to throw her hand in the ring and apply for chief of staff if that's the case. Finally, they're giving our girl Terry a story. I just hope that it involves actual screen time for Terry. I mean, let's face it, becoming the chief of staff doesn't necessarily give you a story on GH, unless of course you're working with Jason. But I just, you know, I love Terry. I think that she has such a calming presence about her, and I really want to see her more on the show more often as more than just Elizabeth's soundboard. But anyway, that's it. Those were the highlights of General Hospital this week. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you liked it, give it a big old thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out. Congratulations.